Alright, so I'm gonna be going over a new tutorial. This is where I've previously left off. So you could take a look over here and yeah, I'm gonna press space bar. Okay, so subject topic is mainly about Arnold area lights, and I'm gonna talk about what to tune specifically. So these are the main things to tune: exposure, roundness, soft edge samples, and visibility. I mean transmission, which is under visibility. And then I'm going to talk about there's difference between smaller area lights versus larger area lights. And then I'm going to also talk about the render view and saving thumbnails. Okay. So this is the scene. I'm gonna name it, or I've named it to be intro lighting shading rendering underscore 3. So that's the file to look at. Okay, so first thing I notice is my left viewport is still set to top, so I need to go in panels, perspective 1, so I can move around. But again, this one's set to perspective 1, so I gotta go perspective, the original one where you can see the compass. And just to make sure, I have this turned on, gate mask. I have the resolution gate also turned on so I can see what's happening. I have my perspective camera locked, and I already have it all set up over here. It's basically looking straight ahead with just a minor bit of tilt on the rotation, like tilting down or up, rotate X, and that's about it. And I locked it out so that the camera not moving, it helps to establish the lighting. Because if the camera is always moving and you keep on making renders, then it's hard to kind of gauge what's going on and what's different due to the fact that the camera is moving. Hence the reason why I locked it out. And this camera, perspective 1, is the one that's going to be moving around so I can place my area lights. So yeah, that's what that is. Alright, so from here, make sure it's rendering, menu. I go, okay, so one more thing I need to do. I need to select the sky dome light, and then I need to place it into a display layer. So I select the sky dome light from the outliner or from here, whichever. I go into here, which is under the channel box, and I click on this. Boom. Double click that. I'm gonna put underscore sky dome underscore save, so I can V for visibility, off on, off on. I'm gonna click in this little box set to R for reference, so I can't grab it because it will drive you insane when you have a lot of things going on. Alright, so that's good. And then after that, I'm going to go into Arnold. Right, so Arnold, make sure it's rendering menu, Arnold, lights, area light. So I'm just gonna show it like this, Arnold, lights, area light. Don't mess with all these other things, just area light. Bam. I'm gonna close and close. Here's that light. I'm gonna lift it up. I'm gonna push it here. I'm gonna press R, and from the center cube, I'm gonna make it bigger. So this is a air light. I press the space bar, so maximize it. So this is what it is. It looks pretty unassuming. What first thing I want to point out is this little hair-like strand is literally the pointer that tells you which way this thing is aiming at. That's your aiming, to give you clue as to where it's aiming. Yeah. So that I have to be super aware of. The reason why you have to be aware of that is that I've had students place their area lights like this, but it's blasting light from here, so it's doing absolutely nothing. So yeah, please be aware of that. Next thing I want to talk about is, let me see here. You know what? Let me do this. Let me do some of this. Pull this. Pull that. Pull this. Do some of that. And some of this. Alright. So, exposure, right? Area light exposure. To see the settings, you do Control A as in Apple. That's your attribute editor, which pulls out the attributes for the area light. Here is that light. I do not recommend changing anything about the naming of the area light from the attribute editor. There was a glitch. I don't know if it's still there or not, but I do remember it when you change the name here. Just to be safe, don't change the name here. Change it from here. I'm gonna name this, I don't know, maybe rim light. Rim light from here, not from here. Reason why is you'll notice when I changed it from here to here, it kept this little extra naming called shape. So this is a important wording that the programming within the software acknowledges and communicates with, I think. So do not mess with this, only here. That's the reason why. Alright, so I named it rim light. So rim light is lighting from behind, right? Because it catches the rim around. But before I do any of that, I want to stick to this point here, exposure. So I pressed Q to hide the controller. Q as in Q-tip. Exposure. So the exposure is what's gonna pump the strength of the light, not the intensity, right? I repeat, just save yourself trouble and headache. Don't mess with the intensity, okay? Don't mess with it. These are not my hard set rules, but where I learn from other artists and whatnot, and there seems to be a common consensus that just to mess with exposure, not the intensity. Because if you end up messing with both, now you have more of a headache, So leave intensity alone. I repeat, leave it alone. Only mess with the exposure to make the strength of the light stronger or weaker exposure. So with that in mind, on average, minimum, you want it to be at least 6 whole in terms of the strength, like 6 whole numbers for now. And then by the time typically you reach, let's say 14 and over, like 14 and above, see how bright it got? See here, this is a clue that tells you. So I'm going to drop it down to 5. This shading, this image represents just a real generic clue that tells you how the light is going to affect a shader ball. So this is a shader ball, and then this is the effect it has on it. Well, a real rough representation. By the time I jack it to 15, see how blown out it gets. So, but this is not always true. It's just a poor man's representation. Anyhow, so like 6 is the bare minimum, and I'll barely get you any lighting, right? But I wrote here, but there are variables to this. So it's not a hard rule, not a hard set rule. Because a lot of things depend on the size of the area light, which I'm going into here, right? I have to talk about this. So a lot of it depends on the size. So I wrote here, the strength of each Arnold area light will vary depending on how far the area light is in relation to the subject. So here's the subject, and it's about yay distance. And don't count this aimer, right? If I press R for scale, and then I try to pull on this blue cube, so I make this aimer less noticeable, right? You don't start from here. You start from the beginning of the area light. With that in mind, so the strength of each area light and how it affects the subject, right, is two parts, or yeah, three parts. First is the how far the area light is in relation to the subject. Like if it's like this far, it's gonna get progressively weaker, weaker, and weaker. They use I think they called it quadratic fall off, where when the light is super close, it's really intense, right? And then as it moves back, it exponentially gets weaker, 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 and weaker. Yeah. So it's not a linear thing. It's for what I remember, the fall off strength fall off gets stronger much more quickly as you pull back. Whereas close up, it's intense. And then when you pull back, it drops off the strength exponentially faster. Yeah, you'll see in the end afterwards. You have to experiment and you'll see it. So how far? Then you have to consider how large the area light is in relation to the subject. How large? So I'm going to talk about that. Now, what I mean by that is smaller area lights are actually stronger than larger area lights. So if I were to press R and then squeeze this guy in, right, it's gonna be stronger because it's concentrating the strength of the light and channeling it through a small tunnel, you could say, and just blasting it like a straight laser beam. You could kind of imagine it. I'm kind of exaggerating, but that's basically how I kind of interpret it too. Oops. Yeah. So it's actually smaller, it's actually more stronger or powerful or concentrated beam of light, and that means that the smaller area lights, it creates crisper shadows, right? Like a flashlight that has a really narrow beam, right? It's gonna create crisp shadows, and the highlights are actually brighter. The kick that you get out of the highlight or the reflection is brighter because it's so condensed and channeled. Whereas larger area lights, like if I jack it up like this, it's gonna be more diffused and softer and spread out. See, it spreads out the light energy outward, because it's a lot bigger. It does not mean that you have a bigger tunnel that blasts this huge chunk of light this way. It does not mean that. When the light source area light is larger in comparison to the subject, right, and also the distance, it's much more diffused, and it mimics real world lighting, real world studio lighting, which I'll show examples of. Okay, so that's 14 minutes, right? I think I'll just end it like that. But before I do that, I'm going to grab this light, press E as in Edward, and then I'm going to rotate it like so. And then you have to be aware of here, right? Minus 180, minus 180. Press W and pull it back because I want it to be a rim light. And I'm gonna raise it around here. So 180, and then my rotations are clean because you want to just minimize any potential, like anything that will mess with you in terms of like if it's rotated slightly or whatever. You just want to isolate the situation to be a clean overall setup. And yeah, so I this one's gonna be the rim light. I put it behind, so it's gonna put lighting around the rim of the objects, right? Hence rim light. And then I made it larger, right? So it'll blanket all over around. So that's the rim light. And then, going back to the attribute editor, it's been 15 minutes, so the next video I'll talk about some of these, right? You know what? I'll do that right now. Let me just freaking set that up. So I put minimum 6, but from what I remember, I think I need to at least make it like 7. And then next video I'm gonna go over the rendering. So I'm just dialing in the numbers now. Exposure at 7, leave the intensity alone. Then the roundness, which is here, I just crank it to 1. And then also the soft edge, I also crank it to 1. There's reasons why, but I'm gonna talk about that later. Samples I can tell you just simply right off the bat, change it from 1 to change it to 2. That'll make the shadows nicer and less grainy and just noise and junk. So just set it to 2, no more than 2. And also lastly, transmission, that's under visibility, which is here, right? Visibility, you set the transmission to 1. This is mainly for like glass, for refractions, reflections, so more shows more of it. It just kicks up more, and also I think it also helps with metals because it shows the shine really strong. That's the transmission, and that's it. That's all you gotta do. Again, mess with exposure, mess with the roundness at 1, mess with the soft edge at 1, samples at 2, transmission at 1, and that's it. Don't mess with the color. Do not mess with the color. I repeat, do not mess with the color. Lastly, never have the area light penetrating through the geometry. Do not do that. If you forget about this and you do this, you're gonna end up wondering what the hell's going on, and that alone is gonna burn through an hour or 2 of trying to troubleshoot. So just always lift it up, Alt 5, so you can see wireframe unshaded. I keep it at least yay high, right? Because it will show the reflection or the casting shadows. If you make it super close to the ground, it makes it ultra obvious. It just looks awful. So keep it like at least this high, at least that. And that's about it for this one. That's the bare minimum to get you going. And then next video I'm gonna go over the render view and doing test renders and what to look for. And that's about it. All right, bye.